Great. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to talk a little bit about my experience in teaching life design. Um, so, uh, uh, so I've written a book and created some videos and teach a class called Entrepreneurial Career and Life Design. I'm just gonna, give you some of my, of course, buttons don't work. Okay. Um, stop at any time. I've got like 40 slides. I can talk all day. I can keep it short. You can ask questions throughout at any time. So slow me down, stop me. Wenn ich zu schnell sprechen, du musst etwas zu sagen, ja? Du bist ein bisschen äh, langsamer gehen. So I'm happy to slow down, ask any questions auf Deutsch, Italienisch, kein Problem. So this is kind of a very brief agenda. I'm going to give you a little bit of background, give you some details of the stuff that's in the course, and a little bit about my experience and future plans. So I don't know why my buttons aren't working. Very strange. Okay, well, it is what the way it is. So this was originally started as a assignment in my double semester capstone entrepreneurship class, ENT 78AB, which is a fourth year, 26-week long course where students have already had over 10 courses in entrepreneurship. And so the assignment was apply all that entrepreneurial knowledge to your life and your career. I also created a 13-week one semester course, ENT 401, which is meant for more introductory things. So the same book is used for advanced undergraduates that have had a dozen entrepreneurship courses and students that don't necessarily know anything about entrepreneurship. It's all been at the university undergraduate level, second, third, and fourth year students. The capstone course is for entrepreneurship majors only, but the other one is for anybody. So we get a lot of creative types from the Faculty of Communication and Design. We get graphic artists, we get journalists, we get film students, graphic communication, fashion, stuff like that. So I taught elements of this life design for probably 7, 8 years. But then during the pandemic, because we did everything by distance, I basically wrote the book and created 22 videos. And that was all done, I guess, over the summer after the pandemic started. So the pandemic hit in March when I was in Germany, came back during the pandemic, and then wrote this book. So it's gone through versions 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 8.3. And I've also probably got dozens and dozens of hours of videos with feedback as well. So, when I talk about ECLD, I'm talking about the course, the assignments, the in-class discussion, the personal coaching, the book, which is being published this month as an open educational resource, so freely available to you. You can use bits and pieces of it. There's 22 free YouTube videos that have been viewed, I don't know, a few thousand times. And I've got all these other videos as well too. So the video quality is pretty good. I did it all myself. I've got one of those ring lights, and I use my high def iPhone 11s. I used Camtasia. I hired students for a while to do the editing. So the first few were done in studio design, but they're nice. They've got like music that, a bunch of professors created. It is an intro and an outro. And, I try to have funny videos and, funny photographs and stuff like that. So I've had, pretty good feedback on the videos themselves. And again, that's all freely available. The learning outcome for the course is not really about life design per se. It's a university course designed to teach entrepreneurial and design thinking, knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So for example, I started by looking at Designing Your Life, which is a great book, but it doesn't teach anything about how to do design thinking. It just says, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, but it never gives any indication of why. It never says, now we're going to do some divergent thinking, or now we're going to do some convergent thinking, or now we're going to do some iterations, or now we're going to do, so the Designing Your Life book or the course, one of the things that I rejected was, like, it doesn't actually teach anything about design thinking. It just says, do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then, your life is going to be amazing. And so mine is not so much about designing a career or a life. It's really a bit more about what is entrepreneurship, what are the entrepreneurial tools and methods, what are design thinking, knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and things like that. And so, especially for my advanced entrepreneurship students, I'm really trying to provide cognitive scaffolding for all of their required books that they've already read in all their other courses. So all my students have read Designing for Growth, Value Proposition Design, Business Model Canvas, 2 or 3 Lean Startup books, 100 Steps to Startup. They've all had strategy courses. So, part of the design of my courses is rather than just here's another set of tools, it's let me help you understand which of these other tools to use and why. So they already know D4G, value proposition design, all these other tools, but they don't know when to apply them to a side hustle, when to apply them to their life, when to apply them to their career and stuff like that. The other thing is this is an experiential learning course. So there's no quizzes, there's no multiple choice exams. It's all about do stuff. And so what I wanted to do with the course is say, here's asynchronous content to read and watch in your own time, and then do stuff and write about it. And what's the stuff that you should do? Whatever you want to do. It's very self-directed to tie to the students' values. So it's a bit difficult because they're not all starting up businesses, but some are. They're not all doing side hustles, but some are. All the creative students are always doing a side hustle. They all have consulting projects. They all do, hair extensions and nail filing, or, the boys all, it really is kind of like ridiculously stereotypical. Like half the guys are really into cars and sports. Half the girls are all into fashion and makeup. And they do stuff related to, the guys are all fixing up cars or teaching sports. So many of the women have something to do with fashion and makeup. It really is kind of silly. But, they're 19 years old and that's what their side hustles look like. A lot of other ones are doing social entrepreneurship things. Some just want a job. And so the course is a kind of quite flexible to let anyone do kind of anything they want with some kind of a structure. Any questions so far? So this is an entrepreneurship course. So the question, of course, is what is entrepreneurship? And most of my research and a lot of my publications have been around this idea that entrepreneurship is not about starting up a business. Entrepreneurship is about thinking like an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is about being entrepreneurial. And so, to use the language of EntreTime, it's teaching through entrepreneurship rather than teaching for entrepreneurship or teaching about entrepreneurship. So I'm trying to get at these deeper cognitive levels and these deeper cognitive structures around attitudes rather than knowledge. So it's about thinking differently and seeing differently. And so it's very different than just saying, here's some content about entrepreneurship's role in the economy and how to spot opportunities and how to start up a business and how to structure a business and how to raise money. So I don't talk about any of that stuff. It's all about changing kind of who you are and how you think about things. So one of the big kind of pieces of this is the difference between planning and searching. That almost all of the courses that the students have ever had are around a planning-based mindset, this causal-based reasoning, the way that we used to teach a business plan, come up with an idea, a goal, and then create 5-year pro forma financial projections and, identify your target market. And we don't teach that way anymore. I mean, if you're on the planning side of things, then, strategic management concepts work really well. But if you're on the search-based side of things, then those kinds of causal-based reasoning things don't work very well. You need effectuation. And so I use this idea of farming versus hunting, that, the planning thing is like farming. If you want to grow tomatoes, if the goal, the end result is you want tomatoes, plant tomato plants, control all the means at your disposal around water and sunlight. And, if you live in Canada, you build a greenhouse to control all of, for the external stuff. So if you want tomato plants, you know how to farm to always, get tomatoes. But if you're on the hunting side of things, you kind of don't know where the food is. You go in one direction, you don't find anything, you have to go in another direction. Maybe you're looking for this, but you find something else, and you're kind of this constant effectual searching rather than causal reasoning based planning. So to some extent, I have to cover both, because some students kind of know what they want to do. And it's all about, how do you make that happen? And so there's tools that arise out of the strategic management literature, out of the planning-based side of things, and out of the goal-setting literature, which are good, valid tools. So I draw from the planning-based side of things, but I also drive from the effectual search-based side of things, that you don't know what the goal is. You just have to find kind of an interesting direction, and then, go in that direction for a while, and then adapt to uncertain changes in the environment. And so the only thing you can control as an entrepreneur is your own time and effort, and you use effectual methods and tools. So at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is more than just starting up a business. It's looking at what's possible, or looking at what is and seeing what might be, and using these entrepreneurial attitudes like curiosity and creativity and alertness and things like that, knowing that you can make it happen. So you have to have a sense of your own self-efficacy and self-esteem, your own self-leadership, self-management, self-discipline, internal locus of control, perceived behavioral control, these kinds of exertion of agency, if you will. Taking action to do stuff, get out of the building, one of the fundamental tenets of lean startup. And then learning and improving through conscious practice and self-reflection. Self-reflection is a very well-known, important pedagogical tool for experiential-based learning. But then, reframing to enhance your resiliency and to have a growth mindset and be more adaptable. And so this is where a lot of these entrepreneurial mindsets come in. Here we go. I screwed up my thing. Here we go. Can you still see that? So there's 4 domains of entrepreneurship. There's starting up a new business. That's your traditional form of entrepreneurship. There's being innovative within a company, also known as corporate innovation or corporate entrepreneurship, or sometimes intrapreneurship. There's also social change making or active citizenry, social innovation, stuff like that. And the 4th domain is personal empowerment. This is, rather than looking at a customer in an entrepreneurial way, rather than looking at your job in an entrepreneurial way, rather than looking at society in an entrepreneurial way, you're looking at yourself and your own career and life in an entrepreneurial way. And so all the entrepreneurial methods and tools and everything were validated with these kind of first 3 domains of entrepreneurship. But then once you've learned these methods and applied them to these 3, you can also apply those methods to so here we go. I'm trying this over again. So the methods are validated here, but then they're applied to this personal empowerment idea. And so the class is about personal empowerment, even though we use the methods that arise from these other things. So when I talk about career, I'm talking about more than just a job search. I'm talking about custom job design, or this co-creation of a job, by this proactive focus on positioning yourself within a broader industry rather than just applying for jobs, which means you need human capital growth beyond what your current job needs. And how do you get that human capital growth? Through a side hustle or social change making or something like that. And of course, we all know it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so building your social capital. So a big part of building a career is building your own human and social capital beyond what your job requires. So instead of selecting from given job offers, you're co-creating jobs. Instead of letting your company train you, you take control of your own education, your own human and social capital through these entrepreneurial things. So life design then is, when you're climbing Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the job gives you, food and shelter and security and maybe some financial security. But, as you grow up, you want higher values beyond just a job, and a career, could relate to love and belonging, could relate to, self-esteem, and eventually self-actualization and meaning. And so, this is why it's career and life design. A lot of my 20-year-old students only care about career or getting a job, but eventually you're going to grow up. And these same tools apply to dating. These same tools apply to deciding whether to have children or not. These same tools apply to figuring out, what brings you meaning and happiness and well-being in your life. And so as you climb Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your design challenge changes. When you're 20, all you might care about is, I just want a job that doesn't suck. But as you grow up, you're probably going to want to start thinking about a family and where you want to live and a more holistic kind of life thing. So the ultimate goal is, meaning and happiness and well-being. Interestingly, the most important cause of happiness and well-being is not financial security. It's not your job. It's not promotion. It's not religion. It's not marriage. It's not age. It's not even health. The most important cause of happiness and well-being are your attitudes. And so this comes out of the positive psychology literature and the cognitive behavioral therapy literature, that the things most within your control are things like optimism, resiliency, independence and locus of control, growth mindset, flow activities, use of signature strengths, that kind of stuff. And so, even though entrepreneurial attitudes are important for job and career, it's also important for those higher value things as well, too. So designing your life means designing your attitudes, which means designing your habits. And so taking control of monitoring, self-regulating your self-talk, your automatic thoughts, your beliefs, attitudes, and emotions are an important part of life design. And that's really where the course kind of diverges from your normal design thinking and entrepreneurship course, and kind of gets into journaling, introspection, self-reflection, positive self-talk, using the ABCs of cognitive behavioral therapy, the ABCDEs of positive psychology, neurolinguistic programming, mindfulness, and some of those other tools. So, basically a career is more than just a job. It's proactive control over your human and social capital. And then a life is more than just being alive. It's proactive control over your character, over your attitudes, habits, and self-talk. So that's kind of what the course is about. Let me stop there for a second. Any thoughts or comments or questions about anything? What a compliant, quiet group.
I would like to ask at the end.
Okay, fair enough. So now I'm going to go through some of the specific details of like what's in the book. I start with the pedagogical pyramid. This is something Florian Huber and I created and published some papers on. That kind of at the base are tools and methods. Up above that are things like processes. Above that are principles, and eventually at the highest level of pedagogy, you're trying to get at this mindset, this attitudes and beliefs and things like that. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. So where do you get these tools from? Well, there's a lot of different sources. There's all the career planning books, right? So there's all this, person environment fit. There's all these personality tests. There's do what you love. What color is your parachute? The job hunter's guide. I've read 30, 40 books on like career planning. I've read all of Savicki's things related to, career planning and kind of that merging into life design. And so there's stuff that arises out of this planning based mindset. There's ideas that come out of strategic management theory and goal setting methods like unique selling proposition, finding your niche, doing a SWOT diagram, a pestle analysis. Like those all come from the kind of planning based side of things. But of course, I grab tools from Designing Your Life, Business Model U. I worked with Matteo in the Beast program. So Matteo and I delivered the very first Beast program thing in Emilia Romagna, Reggio Emilia, and they also kind of had this. You start by going like, what are the 100 tools that are out there? Which ones should we use? And so like I use the IDEO method cards, I use the 8 method cards. There's method cards for design thinking that I created for for some of my other courses. So I've got all those things, the innovation board, all these kinds of things. Then there's all the tools that come out of the entrepreneurship literature, like value proposition design, business model canvas, designing for growth, lean startup, disciplined entrepreneurship, the customer profile canvas, the value proposition canvas. All of those tools are possible sources of tools. And then there's tools that arise out of the cognitive behavioral therapy and positive psychology, mindfulness and happiness literature, like learned optimism, for example, or flourishing, or authentic happiness by Martin Seligman. And then, of course, there's all the stuff that arises out of like habit formation, atomic habits. What's another one? How to Form Habits. Boy, there's a book on my shelf here. What's it called? The Power of Habit by Duhigg is a good book. Self-discipline. I've learned about Stoicism. I've read like 7, 8, 9 books on Stoicism now, and I've got a bunch more books on Stoicism I'm taking up to the cottage over the next month. Self-leadership. So these are all sources of tools. And so originally I had 50 different tools that I picked out of all those. And I described each of those 50 tools. And I told students, you got to pick 10 out of these 50. And some students did all 50 badly. Some students did 10 badly. Some students did 20 with a good job. Anyway, I decided that 50 tools was just too many. I eventually cut that down to 11. The current set of tools in the book, there's 11. And so I use a Wheel of Life tool, which I thought I made up. I'd never heard about this from anybody else. Apparently, the Beast program found a Wheel of Life tool, which I haven't looked at yet. But I kind of created my own Wheel of Life tool and how to craft a design challenge statement. Another tool is the self-reflection tool, and I do this based on Bloom's taxonomy. And then there's stuff that comes out of Designing Your Life. So the journaling, the compass, the AEIOU tool, that comes out of Designing Your Life. I use that one. I use a lot of stuff out of the career planning literature around personality, values, and interests. So I give them like 30, 40, 50 links to, I don't know, like DISC and Myers-Briggs and Seligman's values. I tell them like, just keep on doing new ones until you stop learning anything new about yourself. Most students use 4 or 5 and then stop. But I use that's one of the tools. So that's a divergent. So there's a couple of divergent tools. I use a bunch of convergent tools around SWOT, resume, USP. I use the customer persona tool for like who's going to hire you. Interviewing and networking, that comes from a variety of sources. Also borrows from Designing Your Life. Reframing and design and growth mindset. I use some tools from there, and I think I use Bill Ouellette's anti-fragility tool. out of disciplined entrepreneurship. The Odyssey journey comes from designing your life. The goal setting comes out of, I've read hundreds and hundreds of books on goal setting. I would say Edwin Locke is really the big guru around how to do goal setting. And I've read some of Edwin's Locke's things, and I know him kind of on a personal level as well, too. And then the final one is the ABCDEs of cognitive behavioral therapy and positive self-talk as tool number 10. So those are the current set of tools. Primary sources for methods come out of the strategic planning and goal setting literature, the career planning and personal environment fit things. I mentioned all these other entrepreneurial tools here, like the students have read most of these things before. These are all the books I drew from. Lean Startup is Ash Maurya, Eric Ries, and Stephen Blank. Bill Ouellette's Discipline Entrepreneurship. Beck's my big source of reference on cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a professional psychologist, so I rely upon them for that. And I've got a variety of things that say, look, if you're really struggling with mental health, go talk to a professional. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't prescribe drugs or anything like that. So anyway, I rely upon Beck for that. Seligman is probably my big source for positive psychology. Power of Habit is a really good one. Atomic Habits is a good book. Duhigg's book on the Power of Habit are good. These are my sources of the methods. And so here's my basic method. Is I call it a diamond, or some people call it a loop. Other people call it an iteration. It starts with a good design challenge question. So I spend a lot of time talking about what's a good question, not too narrow, not too broad. And then you pick the right tool or set of tools. This is an example of a brainstorming tool. You use good visualization tools as you do your divergent convergent thinking. You get to the end of the divergent or convergent thinking phase. You want to come up with good insights that you learn something, which becomes a good start for your next loop. And then you have to demonstrate that you made progress from A to B. And so my assignments, the grade is based on, was it a good question? Did you show me photographs of good visualization? Did you come up with good insights, and what were your insights? Is the new design challenge question a good start for your next loop? And demonstrate that you made progress from A to B. So if the question at the beginning was, what should I do for a career? I'm confused. You write a bunch of pages. And at the end of the day, if you're still like, I still don't know what I want to do, I'm still looking for a good job, I'm like, you made no progress. There was no change in your design challenge question. Like, that's a low grade. You didn't help yourself by making progress. And so as a minimum, you should be able to go from, like, let's say the original question was, I want to go into the field of law. By the end of a loop, you should be able to say, well, do you want to work at a big law firm or a small law firm? Do you want to work in criminal law or tort law? Do you want to be a family law lawyer or a criminal lawyer? Do you want to make a lot of money, or are you more interested in social justice? Do you want to work at a place that you wear a suit and a tie in a professional formal business attire, or do you want to work at a place that you can bring your dog to and wear a hoodie to the thing? And so each time you go through one of these loops, you should be refining your design challenge in a way that makes progress. And their grade is based on this. Their grade is based on two things. Did you help yourself? Did you make progress? And did you help me to help you? Like, did you explain it in a way that I can add value to your search? And so this is the basic method. This is the basic loop. And then we go through a bunch of loops. So here's an example of the first loop. You start with the bird in the hand principle. You're trying to figure out, your character, human capital, and social capital. You start with the wheel of life tool. You create a bunch of Post-it notes. You fill in your wheel of life. Then you do some convergent thinking using a 2x2 matrix. And then you should have a revised set of design challenges. That's an example of the first loop. Some of the design challenges that they're encouraged to come up with in the course are career-related design challenges. Partly because like I don't want to get involved in their personal lives. I don't want to get involved in their spiritual challenges or their family challenges or their health challenges. And, these tools apply to that, but like this is a business course for course credit at an accredited university. Like I am not the doctor of love. Like don't come to me with your dating problems kind of thing. Like focus on career related challenges. So startup, job, side hustle, or human and social capital creation. And then there's a character related design challenge in tool 10. Here's another example of now you've done your first loop. Now we're doing the second loop. So in the second loop, you did tool 1 in the first loop. In the second loop, we're using tools 2, 3, and 4. We're doing a bunch of things. You should come up with, by the end of assignment 2, a more specific set of design challenges. I give them a lot of different divergent tools to use. I give them a lot of convergent tools that they can use. Okay, so we're moving on to the principles now. So we've gone from the tools, the 10 or 11 specific tools. We talked about the specific method is this iterative looping thing with divergent and convergent phases. We're now going further up the thing to the principles. And so this is the structure of the book, right? So chapter 1 is all about uncertainty and chaos and why you need planning or searching versus planning. And then I talk about in chapter, I forget which one, but chapter 2 is the bird in the hand principle. Chapter 3 is experimentation. And so these are the principles. Now, most of these arise out of effectuation theory. So like bird in the hand comes right out of effectuation. Crazy quilt comes out of effectuation. Lemonade comes out of effectuation, but they're all a little different, right? So Savernafsky, I'm sure I slaughtered her name. I forget the woman who wrote effectuation. She came up with the lemonade principle, which is about turning failure into something good. Like when life gives you lemons, find lemonade. But I've modified that to say it's not just about recovering from failure. It's also about a deliberate, proactive focus on surprise. And so I don't really use effectuation directly. I've modified almost all of the effectuation ideas a little bit. So, affordable loss is all about managing your downside risk. I also add this idea of building up a portfolio, or don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I've kind of modified all of the effectuation things. Crazy quilts doesn't include radical candor. I added radical candor in there. This experimentation, phase. This does not come out of effectuation. This comes out of design thinking, for example. Pilot in the plane principle comes out of effectuation, but I've added some agency ideas to that. And then I've added this last one, which is integrity, the principle of being principled. And this is to eliminate sources of unhappiness and contradictions in your life. And so this comes more out of, this isn't really a effectuation principle at all. This is more a principle of life design. So this is the book structure around principles. And so, when we get into this, the principle of being principled, this idea that, the pilot in the plane, that you control what you can control, right? So control what's under your control, but the primary thing that's under your control are your own time, attention, habits, character, beliefs, and attitude. So effectuation tends to talk about like what's under your control, or more like your actions and your activities, like what you choose to focus on as an entrepreneur. But one of the things you can spend time on is on modifying your own beliefs, attitudes, intention, and action. And this comes right out of the theory of reason action and the theory of planned behavior. This is Fishbein and Eisen. This is, the theory of planned behavior is far and away the most validated, model in the management literature. I mean, after Penrose's resource-based theory of the firm, the theory of planned behavior is probably the most robust, well-researched, cognitive understanding of human behavior on the face of the planet. That we're not just stimulus and response. We're not just Pavlov's salivating dogs, but we have cognitive antecedents to our actions, and those cognitive antecedents are beliefs, attitudes, intention, and actions. Beliefs and attitudes tend to be subconscious. Your intention or your goals and your actions tend to be more conscious. And so I go through and I talk about the different ways to understand how to live a happy life. So, for example, if you react to things, something happens and you scream out the window. You're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in a car and you scream out the window at them. That's a reaction. Like that's a loss of agency and control. Or let's say that it's raining outside and, it's raining outside, I'm in a bad mood today. Well, you're not in charge of your own happiness. You've given authority to your happiness to whether it's raining or snowing or a sunny day outside. And if you live in northern Germany or Canada, it's going to be raining half the time. So you've doomed yourself to a life of unhappiness if you allow the weather to control your happiness. And so there's a bunch of things you can do around this loss of agency and control in terms of reacting to external things. And that's, somewhat based on, tools like mindfulness and self-reflection. But the primary way that you modify that is through your goals and your habits. And that gives you control of your daily life. And then if you really want to control your intention, that means you have to change your attitudes and beliefs. And you do that through self-talk. You do that through control of your overall character and direction in life. And those tools arise out of cognitive behavioral therapy and neurolinguistic programming. So, so I get students to track their happiness and kind of sort of, look at their intentionality around what they're changing in their goals and their habits. And I've got a self-talk tool. Now, this was a paper that I had accepted at the URAM conference. I think I shared this. This is already up on your drive folder there. So this is the theory of planned behavior, and this is this is a cut and paste out of the conference proceeding or out of my conference paper that the different things that control your intention and your behavior. But if you look at dysfunctional beliefs from cognitive behavioral therapy, there's 4 major sources of dysfunctional beliefs. The first one is I'm evil, I'm unworthy. And that's a belief about yourself that is dysfunctional, or like the world's a dangerous, scary place. I can't achieve my values in the world because the world is bad. And so CBT helps you to rewrite these bad cognitive beliefs and replace them with good ones. So if the primary dysfunctional belief is unworthiness, like I was raised a Catholic, right? I was raised, you're born with original sin. Nothing from this crooked stick was ever wrought. Nothing straight from this crooked stick was ever wrought. You're inherently evil. Men and women are born evil. And women are worse. You're the ones who created all this strife by getting us kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So it's bad enough being a man, but if you're a woman, you caused all this carnage. And you're going to, life is a vale of tears to be persevered through. Happiness is only obtainable in the afterlife, right? So we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. This world is a place of punishment so that you can get into heaven and back into God's good graces. That's how I was taught. I'm evil. I was born evil. Nothing I can do matters. And women are even worse. Women weren't allowed to be priests. I went to an all-boys Catholic school. Women were dangerous to be around because they divert you from, God's divine will. So these beliefs are deeply seated in religion. And so if you want to overcome the belief that you're evil, you want to replace that with the positive belief of self-esteem, right? So the negative is unworthiness. The positive is self-esteem, also known as core self-evaluation. unlovability, right? That's, based on social norms, and no one's going to love me versus I'm worthy. I'm capable of being loved. I'm a good person. And then, of course, the third big killer in the world of cognitive behavioral therapy is helplessness. I'm a victim of fate. I'm a victim of, the stars, oh, I met this cute guy in a bar. I really dig him, but oh, he's a Capricorn. I'm a Cancer. I'm never going to be happy. The world, fate, destiny, determinism, social factors or whatever. I'm helpless. The reverse of that is internal locus of control. Instead of external locus of control or helplessness, the solution to that is self-efficacy. I'm efficacious, and I have perceived behavioral control or internal locus of control. So that's where all these kind of sort of self-talk things come from and how they tie into the theory of planned behavior. And then over the years, like, students write to me about this, and these are some of the common problems that students come up with. Duty to family. I want to go move to California and have fun, but my mom and dad want me to take care of grandma and grandpa. I got to make money for the family. Or, I want to be happy, but I've got this duty to other people. Or, I'm homosexual, but my religion condemns me because I'm an evil, rotten person, and my dad won't talk to me because I'm homosexual. Then, of course, there's the whole determinism, fate, destiny thing. And finally, money is the root of all evil. Like, I'm a business student. I want to start up a business. I want to make some money, but, capitalism is bad. Money is bad. Money is the root of all evil. So they have these cognitive dissonance that prevents them from being happy because they've got these feelings, these dysfunctional beliefs. And so cognitive behavioral therapy can help you rewrite these dysfunctional beliefs to be sources of happiness. So, okay, so here's the last bit then. Top of the pyramid was the mindset. And so this is where all my mindset stuff comes from, right? So I mentioned self-esteem, self-efficacy, core self-evaluation. I measure all these things in my scale. Internal locus of control, self-direction, self-leadership, self-discipline is kind of sort of a construct, if you will. Curiosity, alertness, empathy and opportunity spotting, proactivity, behavioral control, resiliency, grit, tenacity, perseverance, anti-fragility. Different people call it different things. Anyway, so this is my list of entrepreneurial mindset. And you can see they're very close to the entre-comp competencies. They're not identical, but for the most part, there's a lot of, I call it tolerance for ambiguity, uncertainty, and a risk. Entre-comp calls it coping with. Coping with is probably more like resiliency than tolerance for. Or agility. So, coping with ambiguity you do through resiliency and agility. So I don't like coping with. Taking the initiative, I think proactivity and perceived behavioral control are more well-known constructs that arise out of the cognitive science literature. Anyway, so I don't have all of these, but self-awareness and self-efficacy I use. Where are we at? So that's okay. So that's what the course is about. I've got 2 more slides and then we can stop for questions. What's my experience in teaching this for the last 5 years? Some of these things can be delicate subjects, like talking about religion in class. It can be a delicate subject. Talking about homosexuality and your relationship with your parents as a result of homosexuality, it can be a bit controversial. But by and large, I've won every teaching award at my university. Students like me for the most part. The courses are heavily oversubscribed, so that's good. I've been measuring self-efficacy, core self-evaluation, intent in longitudinal across from first year to second to third to fourth year students. I've measured it in business students, non-business students, creative students. Quantitatively, the numbers don't change a whole heck of a lot over the course of 4 years. What I will say is, in general, they all go down over time. My students, they tend to stay about the same or go up a little bit. So, well, I'm not breaking them as much as other professors break them, I guess. So if university tends to decrease all of these things, at least my students, they don't decrease as much, or they even go up a little bit. But the numbers aren't particularly strong, and they're not particularly largely positive. I'd say 25 to 50% of the students love the book or like it. They're highly engaged. I've got lots of great testimonials. You've all got a copy of the book, right? So like the testimonials are really nice. Most of the students who take it as an elective course really like it, or they drop it. The students in the required course, like about 25%, they'll do what they have to do and pass. But I'm kind of unimpressed. And about 15% of my students just fail the course. They don't even do the assignment. They don't read the book. They refuse to read the book. They don't do the assignments. And they fail the whole course over it. That's how much they don't want to do it. So in my required course, 35% of the course grade is based on this. Last year I had a dozen students who basically just said, I'm going to try to pass the course in the other 65%. But you get a couple of C's and D's in the other 65% and you fail the course. So I don't know why. I don't know if it's too long, if it's too many words, if it's too intense, if it's too uncomfortable for them, if they just hate me. I don't know. But I've decided I'm eliminating it from all my required courses. And I'm going to shift to it as only elective courses, because the students in the electives seem to really like it. And if they don't like it, they drop the course. But what I hate is a student who's going to fail my course because they refuse to read my book. And I don't know. I don't want them to read my book if they don't want to read. Like, you don't want to read my book, don't read my book. Like, it's okay. So anyway, so I'm not I've decided to eliminate this assignment from my required course. And it's going to be just an entirely elective course. It's currently being published, even as we speak, as a freely available open educational resource. I'm not convinced that the current structure is the right one. I've kind of bounced around a lot over the years, but I got to move on with my life. So I'm publishing it. It's done. Maybe I'll do a version 2 with the new structure, but I'm going to use the current structure right now. My big goal right now is I've got a new required first-year course called Building an Entrepreneurial Mindset. It's probably going to be the largest entrepreneurship course on the face of the planet, with over 3,000 students a year, probably growing to 5,000 to 6,000 students a year. So that's my big project. And so probably 3/4 of the content of ECLD will not be included in the course, but some of the things will be. Certainly, a lot of the stuff about mindset will be included. And finally, my research interests I have a research interest based on theory of planned behavior. I'm primarily interested in qualitative methods. My quantitative scale stuff hasn't been particularly successful. I think it's hard to publish when you show that the numbers don't change a lot. So I might do a new scale related to, happiness and tension, and, some of these, basically I'd start here and come up with scales for all these different things. There are scales for most of these, not all, but for most of them. They come from a variety of different sources, but maybe coming up with the scale and doing some quantitative research. But I'm more interested in qualitative research, just because I haven't had as much success in the qualitative stuff. So that's it. That's the end of my thing. Let me stop sharing.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Very impressive.
Thank
Should
you.
we stop taping that we discuss openly, or should we tape also the question and answer?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to have questions and answers.
So I'm so impressed. I have a couple of ideas what I thought maybe you have done that already. I think the tools would be really interesting remember the RTI toolbox SCE have. Have you considered developing a toolbox for that? And that on one hand, these are the must-have cards, and that they are able to have a kind of a map when to use what, to visualize everything, and to kind of building a semantic what belongs to what, and having a, because I think some of the 50 tools you identified are still so valuable in certain situation. Have you thought about that, or do you have something like that, or what do you think about that?
So I don't have an answer to that, and here's why. Some students, how to put this? The big danger, and I've got a whole chapter on this, is the danger with step-by-step methods. So if you tell students do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they will just kind of blindly do 1 through 10 and then go, I didn't learn anything. That's your fault, professor. Your system didn't work. I did everything you made me do badly. I put no thought or effort into it, but like, you didn't teach me anything. And that's a deeply ingrained causal-based reasoning approach that most students have been trained since the day they were born. Shut up, don't think, do what I tell you to do. There's a right and wrong answer that I know, and your job is to do what I tell you to do. And so they kind of sort of blindly follow the rules. And so
I recognized I didn't thought in the question on students in a course, more on a coach selecting, oh, here I could use this, and as a more the people like you and me, what could I do and use in a certain context?
Okay.
So, sorry, I haven't clarified that.
Right,
Sorry.
right. So I find this tends to happen in all of my classes, and especially with classes that I co-teach with other people, is so I'll get to your question in a second, Bettina, but I'm going to finish the other part of the question. So what I want to do is give students a flexible, modular way of thinking around principles. Like, do some divergent tools, I don't care which ones, do some convergent tools, I don't care which ones, and make progress. So that's like the principle that I want them to follow. And so, that's why I had 50 tools. Like do some of these, do some of those. I don't care which ones. Pick the ones that are appropriate. Do some that didn't work out and ignore those. And in general, for my undergraduate students, that's been difficult for them to do. This too much flexibility hasn't been great. And that's why I ended up cutting it down to 11. So I've got 11 tools. Each tool has its own videotape. Each tool has its own step-by-step of instructions, combined with the admonition to say, don't follow step-by-step tools. Like, I'm giving you a step-by-step approach, but don't only do the step-by-step thing. So, but your question was, do I have a more generalized set of things for coaches? And the answer to that is no. I've done this for my own class. I haven't done this to teach other professors what to do. But that's a reasonable, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, we did, so I used the APE method toolbox in the previous course in ENT 56 AB, which is the 3rd semester double semester class. And we created our own toolbox that we write and we hand around and give to people. But that's partly because I'm not the only professor. And we've got other professors, and we've got junior professors, and we've got TAs and coaches. And so we did come up with that for other coaches to use. But no, I don't have a set of toolbox for myself.
Not yet.
I don't need them for myself. I've got the book 101 Design Methods. I'm the one who looked at the 6,000 methods and pulled 50 out of there. So no, I don't have that for myself. No.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I have two questions, and so one question is about the applying this tool. You applied it now with your students in university, and I also did this Design Your Life studio here in Stanford. They are also focusing very much on students in universities, and there is a lot of people doing that and already becoming or is more research ongoing. But what I think where we really also need this mindset and these tools and these, it's also it's basically a decision making toolbox. Yeah, how to find out what I really want and then to decide on what I really should do. And I think where we need it is it's really leadership in economy. Yeah, like entrepreneurs, change makers, leaders. And there is not so much research about or I don't know. So what do you think about applying this toolbox also in like in corporations for leadership education?
So I don't have a simple answer for you. So this is really about self-leadership more so than how to lead other people. So if you're talking about, so for example, a lot of companies will have mindfulness classes, or they'll have exercise classes, or they'll have things that make the lives of their employees better. So for that purpose, I think something like this would be great. I think that this is probably too long, too highly structured, and too focused on career for most adults. So I think that there have to be some modifications, and that's another reason why I decided to just publish this thing, because the earlier versions were kind of also meant not just for my students, but I also kind of had in my mind my cousin who just lost her job, and she's in her 50s, right? And so, or my alumni that are changing jobs in their 30s, that are more interested in happiness. And so I found that the whole thing didn't hold together as a unified book when I tried to do too many audiences. So the current book really is primarily geared towards 20-year-olds. I think it would have to be a different book for adults. And I guess the other weakness of this book that I've seen in pretty much any other book that I've ever read is they have lots and lots and lots of examples. And they're more kind of like conversational. And I really haven't taken the time to write those examples. Like I've got them, especially from students. But like that's just another big whack of writing that I haven't done. But I think to answer your question, certainly as a corporate course for how your employees could be happier human beings and how to reframe work as flow-based activities that take advantage of your signature strengths, I think that's great. Because I think a lot of people look at work as, so actually I got a book on my table right here, The How of Happiness, with Sonia. So interestingly, people are happier at work than they are at home. But they don't think they're happier at work because, oh, I have to be at work. And so they have negative attitudes and emotional responses to being at work. They're like, oh, I wish I could be home. Yeah, but when you're home, you sit around and watch TV about President Trump and it makes you mad and you're unhappy. So people tend to be unhappier at home, but yet they don't perceive that as unhappiness because that it's not work. But if you do it's called the experience sampling method. Like if you just kind of like every 5-6 times a day, Georg's going about his life and suddenly, boom, Georg, what's your happiness level right now? What are you doing right now? And what you find is in general, Georg's like, well, I'm at work, but I'm really kind of happy and engaged and things are going pretty well. And, then you buzz him at home. He's like, yeah, I had a fight with my kid. I'm sitting around watching, I don't know, Der Spiegel and it sucks, and it's all about Russia and gas, and it's going to be a bad winter. And so like reframing people's beliefs and attitudes towards work, I think would be a huge thing, huge from a corporate point of view. And to be able to have a program that says, how can we help reshape your work environment to give you more experience of flow? How can we take away from you the stuff that you don't like to do and give you more of the stuff that you do like to do? So that if we let's say we're all a team, and I'm the leader, right? And it's like, Bettina, you love doing detailed oriented administration kind of stuff. You love doing all that kind of stuff. You love playing with spreadsheets. You love planning. You love taking notes. Georg hates that stuff. Georg likes to sit behind the computer and play with spreadsheets all day long. And Bettina's like, oh, I hate doing projections. So the idea is to, give Georg what he loves to do, give Bettina the stuff that she loves to do, kind of reframe our experiences around we're having fun, this is interesting, we're doing something meaningful that's good for ourselves and the world. I think those are great elements of corporate training. But I wouldn't call that leadership. If anything, I'd call that more HR management. And I wouldn't necessarily call that leadership per se. So I wouldn't have done it as a leadership program. But maybe, I don't know, maybe as a piece of corporate leadership or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, what you were talking about is having your employees more happy and then being more motivated. Yeah, okay, that would be HR. But I even see a bigger picture there, having leaders who are more self-aware or conscious, not only about themselves, but perhaps more about the world. When you go through this process, yeah, it opens up your consciousness, and it could change, or I think it will change your decision making to a more sustainable, more human-centered, more self.
Yeah, maybe. I guess what I wouldn't call it life design. I guess I'd call it something like corporate CSR design, or corporate meaning. How do I find more meaning in my business, or how do I human-centric corporate leadership or something. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that, but I don't think of it as life design per se.
I would
more like company design.
To build
no, of course,
on what can I briefly what I would like to go on that, because I really like the notion from Siemens executive training, where they said you have to lead yourself, that this is the start in order to lead others, in order to lead business. And when it comes to entrepreneurial life design, when it comes not just to general career planning, but also these kind of entrepreneurial, most of the students are not working just by themselves. They are somehow in a team. So, and even if they are starting with somehow okay, and I experience this right now again, very positive doer, and in the team, the dynamics have been negative, that she's so powerful and strong that everyone is looking to her, and she felt obligated to do that. And then she was not dealing with her energy. And so it's also, how does yourself work then with the influence of others in the team, or maybe in an organization where you have organizational dynamics. And I think this would be useful in order to, because my assumption is that things like this is the kind of a core, but you need other levels on top in order to execute life design in a system, if it's in a team system or organizational system or societal system. And the team can also be, of course, the family.
Well, I certainly agree that design thinking as a generic tool can be applied to a wide variety of things, career and life design, company design, team flow. So I think we've got a lot of the components of what you're talking about. I think it would need some other components. I think it's missing a lot of tools. So I think we probably would need to add a bunch of tools. But I think the overall method could be exactly the same. Like, I think the method of what's the challenge? What's the issue we're trying to address? What are the tools that we want to apply? So I think that's very generic. I think the principles are all pretty generic. You might want to add some additional principles around, like, more than just radical collaboration, radical candor. I think you'd probably have to add some additional tools in there around, I don't know, respect, and probably equity, diversity, and inclusion, and some of those other kinds of things that I just don't have those tools yet. But yeah, I think that this is a starting point. But I think it could easily be applied to a lot of those things. Yeah, I would agree. Georg, you got your hand up?
Yes, there were. I have two comments on what you said. The first thing is, what I liked very much is that you pointed out the relevance of personal goals and the personal motivation. And this is more or less what is behind the expression of leadership, setting goals and creating the energy to be able to reach those goals. And there's an interesting study at the University of St. Gallen done by Steffi Bruch. No, what's her name? Bettina Bruch?
Heike Bruch. Organizationale Energien, organizational energies.
Yeah, because you say if you want leadership for other people, the first thing is you start with yourself leadership. And she found out that only 10% of the managers fulfill these requirements to have goals and that they can deal with their energy. So some of them don't have goals. They are busy going nowhere. Others have many goals, but they cannot deal with their own energy. So they have bad energy, which keeps them off doing things they want, or they have not enough positive energy in order to overcome all the obstacles and hurdles and so on. And this was a fact that was very interesting for me in your presentation. And the second thing is that I always see that from two perspectives. Either you can change your environment, you can change the situation, but often you can't. And this is also one thing I have read out from what you said, that you say, if you cannot change the situation, the team, your environment, you have to change your own attitude. And this is more or less a common sentence, that you say you have to change your own attitude, but you mentioned all the cognitive obstacles keeping us away from changing our own habits, our own habits. And you mentioned the book by Dewey, which I liked very much. So what is the power of the habits, and how can you change habits? And this is what I appreciate very much, that you say, as I've understood you correctly, that you say try to change your situation, but sometimes you can't. You have to work in a team with other people under certain circumstances, and so you somehow have to so this is part of your self-leadership, to bring you in a situation where you can handle it easier and you like it more, to work in the situation, although you cannot change the situation, but you can change your attitude.
Yeah, let me make a couple of comments on both of those points. I'll start with the second one first. I think is a bit easier. So I like to use the example that I hate the weather in Toronto in February, March, and April. Like, it's just cold, it's miserable, the winter's gone on too long. Like, you know, it's like enough already. Like, winter is fun in November, December, January, but by February, March, April, I'm well and truly sick of it. So you have two choices. You can either try to change your environment. Like, I'm just going to try to go to Germany every February, March, and then move to Bologna. But you know what? It still rains in Bologna.
Yes.
And still rains in Germany.
Yes.
And so like there's only so much you can do by trying to control the external things. At the end of the day, you got to learn how to carry your weather inside of you and say it's miserable and rainy outside. Great sunny day in my little world. In my head, it's sunny and beautiful.
Yes.
And so you got to change yourself. Another example I like to use is driving in downtown Toronto. Like you're gonna have some jerk cut you off, and then when you blow your horn, they give you the finger. You know, traffic is gonna be bad. Somebody's gonna do something bad, and then somebody's gonna flick a cigarette out the window, and like, so what are you gonna do about it? Well, you know, you can try to drive downtown less often. You can try to take the subway more often. You can try to move your schedule around so you don't have to do things at a certain time. And so but I've made all those changes. I take the train in, I listen to beautiful music, I try to take the subway, but I still have to drive sometimes. And there's still people on the road and there's still bad traffic. So like at the end of the day, you always have to change your relationship to the external world. And that's, you know, so again, you can change your reaction to negative drivers or your reaction to the weather. That's that stuff at the far side. Or you could change your goals and your habits around, like, I'm going to live in Europe every spring, or I'm not going to drive the car. So you do have to do both. But at the end of the day, the thing that's primarily under your control is you. And that's part of the pilot and the plane principle. You know, I mean, people ask me questions all the time about, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And I say, doesn't matter what I think about this or that. It's outside of my control. Like, I don't vote in the US election. What do I think about Trump? Doesn't really matter. Like, it's outside of my control. And if I try to convince, you know, anybody I know about who to vote for, they're not going to listen to me. So like, what's the point? But you know, the thing about goals, I think, just is an important thing, because goals work. Goals work. Tons of research shows that goals are often the main thing that drives performance. But there's two kinds of goals. There's goals that you set that become a burden on your life, that cause anxiety and unhappiness. And now you're like, I got to do this thing, got to do this thing, got to do this thing. Versus with effectual thinking, a goal isn't really a goal. It's more of a hypothesis and a direction. I think if I point towards this direction, it will make me happier. Let me take some steps in that direction, listen to the emotional feedback, and then decide if I want to pivot or not. So my favorite one here is, you know, oh, I want to lose weight. I want to be 160 pounds. And I'm like, that's my goal. I'm going to try to lose weight, you know, and I'm going to do all these things. And then every year I usually say, you know, that extra 5 pounds looks okay on me. You know, you're trying to meet that goal of that particular weight. I'm not a young man anymore. I'm not exercising. My wife's a great cook. Like, at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, that was just a hypothesis goal. Rather than beating myself up over not achieving that goal, I'm going to say, you know what, maybe I'm going to change that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because this is goal setting is really important, because I think it's done very well. It's also done very badly, and sometimes it causes a lot of emotional havoc as well too. So sorry, Georg.
You're talking about goals, and the most common goals are the SMART goals. And you just cited Locker and Latham when they say there is a result, like I want to have 5 innovations per year, and then the action that has to be taken, like we have to run 20 more projects. This is all around the SMART goals. But what Locker and Latham wrote, at what nobody cares about, is that they say SMART goals only work if you are motivated for the goals. So I, for myself, I would love to lose 15 kilos because I've gained that in the time of Corona. But more or less, I see myself not having this attitude and the motivational goal to do this. And Locker and Latham explicitly wrote, SMART goals only work if you are motivated for this task, what it is about. And that is the problem in many times, that people talk about these goals, but they ask themselves, why should I do this? Why should I be motivated? And there's a good difference you made between explicit and implicit goals. And the last thing I want to say is, excuse me, Barbara, what I see in my practical work as a coach and as a teacher for self-management here in Germany, is that students, as well as doctoral students and professors, have an enormous problem finding out what kind of implicit goals they have. So what am I striving for? What am I burning for? So these explicit goals, this is everything around what your parents told you, and you have to write your doctoral thesis, you have to be successful, blah, blah, blah. But the question is, what really drives you? And all the people also coming to my courses, to my seminars, they have the huge problem not to deal with time planning, SMART, SWOT, blah, blah, blah. Their first problem is to say, what is really important in life? And this is very difficult to find out, because those implicit goals are implicit. So there is no language where you can get access to your system. There is no consciousness where you can get access to the system. So you need special tools and instruments and methods in order to reach this implicit. And the Myers-Squibb test long ago is, I would say, in the academical world, not renowned, and people say this is from the theoretical side, and from the explanation this model gives. This is not something that it's so. In practice, it's used very often, but in the academical world, I would say there is too much critics about it, and there is no academic fundament for this Myers-Squibb test.
So I'm going to reference this particular diagram.
Yeah. I like that very much.
I would say that the what you call explicit goals is what Eisen and Fishbein would call intention.
Yes.
And intention is not a 0 or a 1, right? Like, it's not an on-off switch. It's more of like a dial. It's more of a likelihood probabilistic thing. So it's like, yeah, I kind of want to lose weight, but yeah, I kind of like to eat as well too. And you're like, yeah, so it kind of goes up and down, that intention. But the implicit goals, I would suggest the construct is values. That values are and values are tough to get at, as you say.
Yes.
Values tend to be subconscious and sometimes contradictory, and sometimes you don't know it. And this is really where this, self-reflection, mindfulness, and sometimes you need therapy to get at these subconscious things.
Yeah.
And so from my own sake, what I can tell you is that I often don't know necessarily what my beliefs and attitudes are.
Yes. Yes.
But what I'll say is I don't care what they actually are. I'm going to rewrite them with what I want them to be. And over time, the negative, like again, so I was raised a Catholic. Like the thought that I was born evil is deep, deep, deep in there from the day I was born. Like you don't just go, oh, I'm not Catholic anymore. Yay, I'm good, I'm worthy, I have self. Like it just doesn't happen. Like all those thoughts that the nuns kind of sort of indoctrinated me with for the first 18 years of my life, I'm not sure how to get those out, but I can kind of sort of write over the top of them with my new attitudes and beliefs that I want to have, that I choose to have. So that's kind of sort of using consciousness to kind of like write over the subconscious. But I again, I find that goals don't work partly because you need to turn the goals into habits. And so this is why I call this control over daily life. So, let me give you an example. I want to drink 5 glasses of water a day. That's a pretty easy goal. There's no conflict. Like I know what my values are. I want to have a healthy life. I want to live a long time. Like beliefs, attitudes, values, goals. Like I'm going to drink 5 glasses of water a day, but it just doesn't happen. And it has nothing to do with your goals. It has nothing to do with any. What it has to do is have you habituated drinking water? And this is where the Duhigg book and some of these other ones are so good, because you got to find the stimulus response. So I'm like, okay, every morning I get up and have a cup of coffee. I got to find a way to drink a glass of water before I have that first cup of coffee. Aha! What other little triggers can I come up with to have that glass of water? At lunchtime, I always finish my glass before I pour a new glass, and then I don't get up from the table until that glass is done, and kind of reinforcing those habits. And so it's complex, isn't it? You got internal things, and some of those are and then even your values tend to either be positive goal seeking or negative pain avoidance. And so whether they're attraction by love or repulsion from pain, like that's kind of a big thing as well too. So like work, are you attracted to the work that you do because of a value? Or are you like, well, if I don't have a job, I'm going to starve and my parents will, disown me. I got to have a job even though I hate it, kind of a thing. And so kind of rewiring your values through positive self-talk to kind of have more positive goal oriented things, rather than, oh, well, I got to have a job because, no one will marry me if I don't have a job, or, I'll be a bum living in my parents' basement. Like that's I'm only working because I have to, not because I actually want to. Anyway, Barbara's got her hand up. We could talk about this stuff forever.
Yeah, I also want to say one sentence about goals, because and then I have one more question. But with the goals, I see like on different levels. I think it's easier if you have like a vision, like a more a goal direction that is not a concrete actionable goal, but more like, I don't know, in an example of companies, for example, a vacuum cleaner company, they could have like the vision of having the best vacuum cleaners. And then they have like goals under that, But if they would have the vision of helping the people to have the cleanest house, then the vision would be much broader, and there could be much other goals going under that. And in the end, it doesn't have to be a vacuum cleaner to help the people, but it could be different. And this is changing, It's like the goals and the vision is changing because like our environment is changing, and we see, we have different, the values, the priorities are changing, and we have to constantly adapt and see, is our vision still the right one? Do our goals that we take action on are still leading us to this vision that we think is the important one? And sometimes we end up with a goal that we set yesterday, but it's not really leading to our vision anymore. And then it feels like a burden, because we don't see the sense. Why am I doing that? So that's how I see it, like more like this direction, visionary goal, and then breaking it down to more actionable goals. But I had another question, and
I
I
will
don't
say
know how much
most
time
people are really, really bad at goal setting. They're sloppy, they're vague. And you know, even when you teach them the SMART goals, they just follow it badly. It's like there's a whole science. I could teach a whole class on just how to do goal setting.
Yeah. No, but also as Georg said, so that's really, really hard work to find out what is your value, what is your purpose, what is your vision.
Yeah.
And it's moving the whole time. So it's like, you don't have to do it once, you have to do it like constantly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and some people just are not interested or don't take the time, don't see the necessity.
I look a little bit about the time, because I think Steve is so right. We can talk, Stephen, we can talk forever, because it's a topic that is driving us innerly. It is just I'm here since 7:30, and I would love to go home, because I have to be there tomorrow morning early again, because we have our last day. So if you do not mind, I would stop the taping and